Okay, we're gonna test this out. Though it may not look it, it won't look it. I do adhere to a kind of form when I do this, except right now, when I test the mic. That's the only time I do whatever I damn well please. Let's test the mic. Let's see how we're doing out by the door. Poor Otis dead and gone, left me here to sing this song. Pretty little girl with a red dress on, poor Otis dead and gone. Can you hear me? I didn't ask if you wanted to hear me. Shut up. Can you hear me? Poor Otis is dead and gone, and so is William Packard, right? And that's always the first name I say on this stage, William Packard. I'm standing on this stage because of William Packard. Well, why? Because William Packard, many years ago, William Packard decided he was going to do something, and he did it. What did he do? Founded the New York Quarterly, the best poetry magazine that's ever been published on the planet. No two ways about that. And we're here. You're here. I'm here. It's still here because of what he did. And say, you know what I got in my pocket?
No.
Yeah, I'll show you.
I have no idea.
Yeah. I got this. We catch the light. Yeah, I got that. Everybody see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that. That's a cross. Handmade, obviously. Crudely and beautifully made. Where did I get that? I got that at Bill Packard's apartment. The day before someone came in to throw everything out after he died. Yeah, I was there legally with the executor of his will. He said, you see anything you want, you just take it because we're throwing everything out tomorrow. This was hanging from a doorknob, so I took it. So, let's do this. That's as close as you're going to come to a blessing from William Packard these days. And I think it's pretty good. Anyone who here had the privilege of meeting William Packard had a rare treat, had good luck in life. Anybody that studied with him learned something. No two ways about that. He was a natural teacher, born teacher, a real sensei, rabbi, teacher. Those are very rare, I think, very rare. I think are there only like a handful of classical pianists on earth at any given time? Maybe a handful, maybe if that. Same with teachers. So if you met Bill, you learn from him naturally. And what did you learn about it? You learned about poetry. That was his subject, that was his thing. He was a great guy, and he's more than proven it by creating something that has sustained itself since 1969, publishing poetry. Right? In this world, that's like saying, you know, I'm going to make mud pies and see how long I last. Right? In fact, I think you got a better chance in this world with mud pies than with poetry. But he didn't fail. It succeeded because of his strength, his vision, and those that came after him who, the torch was not passed because it wasn't a torch. If it had been a torch, it would have been dropped by somebody by now. But it wasn't a torch, it was fire. It was fire itself. And that's what's kept it going this long, right to this moment, right on this stage. And that is thanks to a lot of folks, some of whom are right in this room, right now, thank goodness. Like Raymond Hammond. Ray Hammond. And one of our readers who will be named later. As a matter of fact, when he's come up to read. Okay, showtime. My name, none of your business. Yeah. You can call me Doug if you want. Big deal. Call me Douglas or Doug. I didn't really mention my name because I like mentioning William Packard's name. And I would dedicate a show. I'll do that too. Last show I dedicated, a month ago, I dedicated a show to, how hip is this room? Let's check. I dedicated it, it was a twin dedication, to John Clare. We got a hit for John Clare? All right. Hey, John. I bet he likes that. And Skip Spence. Got a hit? All right. We got a hit for Skip Spence? Great. Very hip room. I feel comfy all of a sudden. All right. I'm going to dedicate this show to. Who am I going to dedicate it to? Dedicate to a lot of different people. What would I like to dedicate it? I'm going to dedicate this to a poet, naturally enough. Tom Gunn is going to get the dedication tonight. Do we get a hit for Tom Gunn? Yeah, Tom Gunn. Why? I'll tell you why. He's a great poet. Real poet. I don't want to say great. Right? He's a real poet. Real poet. Came out in the 50s in England, along with Ted Hughes. I got his first book at home. They published together, Ted Hughes and Tom Gunn, right? And he was destined, right, for poet laureate and stuff like that. Well, that didn't happen. It happened for Hughes. He hung in there, and he got it. What did Tom Gunn do? What did he foolishly throw away? Why did he do it? Tom Gunn moved to San Francisco and put on a pair of black leather pants and dedicated his life to the pursuit of narcissism, promiscuity, poetry, and friendship. And he croaked in his early 70s, wearing those pants, a full luxuriant head of hair, the motherfucker, and a smile on his face, and more goddamn drugs in his body than the whole of the Lower East Side even knows about. I wish this world presented me with more people that I can respect, which is why I so cherish the ones that I do. I really respect Tom Gunn, and this show tonight is dedicated to him. So, Mr. Gunn, you relax and enjoy yourself up there in, I hope, some leather bar in heaven, talking to a total attractive stranger, while Grace Jones' version of La Vie en Rose is playing, and you turn to him and you say, you know, that's my favorite fucking song. Showtime! Luck at first is everything. Don't take my word for it. Take it from Balzac. Balzac said that. Luck at, come on, give you some power. Luck at first is everything. He's right about that. So that's why our first reader is our first reader. Because she had luck at first. You know what? She was born in the Holy Land. She was born in the Holy Land. If you're born in the Holy Land, I think that means you got a lifetime more or less stress-free, right? Or at least with a lot more time. Because if you're not born in the Holy Land, you got to get to the Holy Land. There's no two ways about that. That's just a fact, right? It's like the salmon going upstream, the humans got to get to the Holy Land. All right, well, she was born there. So she had that taken care of first day on earth. Luck at first is everything. And she's got a great name. It rhymes. Her name is, I'm going to pronounce this correctly, Ayala. Sella, take the stage, ma'am. There you go, ma'am. Do you like it? Sure. All right. Let me not fall down the stairs, okay?
Hi, everyone. The last time I was here at the Bowery was about 5 years ago, almost exactly. And my book had just come out. And earlier in that year, I left Israel and came back to New York to finally bind my poems. And by the end of the summer, I was already back in Israel. So, like my poems, I think I'm part here, part there. And the book is more or less in order. And the first poem I'll read to you tonight is from a section of the book called From Another Direction. And it's when I went back to Israel and left New York after 20 years. And the poem is called 5767. My cat cuddles more on Saturday as though she knows. Even the dogs aren't begging for a walk. They're content that there are no construction workers and horns honking and yelling and screaming of all kinds. The new year has landed us this silence and the first raindrops too, and everyone is sitting in some family living room. The only place open is the corner store on Abandoned where we used to buy ice cream before or after our trips. Now it's my usual hangout. When I get enough energy, I'll make my way there for some stale pastries, bad coffee, and free internet service. On the way, there'll be the playing of a clarinet. Then I'll send you this poem, give the dogs a brushing, and find the sea from another direction. And in my restless nature, I also moved a lot while I was in Israel. I think I counted 9 homes and 4 kibbutzim. And among all of these moves, I lived near the Kinneret, the Lake of Galilee, and I had a number of odd jobs. And one of them was as a hotel receptionist. And the next poem was written at one of these hotels. And it's called Cats at the Holiday Village. An old Christian Southerner approaches the counter to settle his bill. He's had a bottle of wine and pays with a credit card in case he meets a woman who will want all his money, to which of course the reception clerk laughs without holding back. There have been more than one recently to ask me why I laugh, which you never had to. And then this Christ worshipper says, "You're a mess, you're a troublemaker," which needless to say I take as a compliment and wonder what the Lord himself would have thought. The next job I had was actually as a hotel receptionist across the lake. And oddly enough, these very lame jobs gave way to at least a handful of poems. And the next one is called Golden Tulip. I started to work as a dumb reception clerk at a dumb 4-star hotel in an ugly town. There's a group of Holocaust victims from Netanya on vacation, a gift from the German government. Many of them still have tattoos, and as all-inclusive guests, they are asked to wear yellow bands like those of an amusement park. One man says it's enough the Germans made us wear yellow. Another woman, the tattoo my husband can't remove. And they visit the sites, swim in the hot springs, take a trip to the Golan, sit by the pool. They have made it to the Holy Land from various European countries where entire populations were exterminated. Later, this woman searches for the management to complain of the yellow, even though her husband has told her to forget about it. I invite her over to the desk and remove her bracelet and that of her husband with large orange scissors. It's actually, as my father says, it sounds like a political poem, but it isn't at all. And among all of these places that I lived in, Tel Aviv and Tiberias, I ended up at the tip of the country in the north on the border of Lebanon, literally in the middle of nowhere, working as a high school English teacher. That lasted about 3 months. And this is a poem from that period, and it's called Monday. There's some Dylan this time. The dogs are sleeping. On my desktop is a beautiful photo of a sunset, a fox, and a girl in a green dress. In Lebanon, there's some serious lightning. If I have enough strength, I'll take a hot shower, even though the second shower I brought home today is still too short. If not, I'll jump straight under the X-ray blanket and its down feathers, read a few lines, and fall asleep. Tomorrow, I will have no clean underwear. And you, a mountain or two, some hills and a valley away, watching perhaps flicks of tanks on the computer, or reading the newspaper and taking a shit, or eating sunflower seeds on the couch, are more normal than anyone I know. And then I made it back to Tel Aviv again. I was somehow bribed by my father, who wanted me to leave the middle of nowhere and live in the city and go back to school, and I did. And I always say that the most exciting thing that happened to me there at that time was that I met a girl, and I turned 30. And this poem is called 30. I liked eating chopped liver with you at the neighborhood pub and drinking sparkling wine on the beach in plastic cups, grabbing your breasts in between laughter. I liked walking with you through the streets of the city and sitting on a bench after Italian ice cream, listening to your tales and your wishes. I liked waking up in the afternoon to your bee-stung lips and your full participation, and then before dawn to fix you some mint tea. I liked asking your advice about my criminal doings in this small country, lending you my nail clipper and my smallest pennies. I liked telling you I wasn't going to shower, dragging you down with me. And then there was another bottle of bubbles, and some cured meat, and another night, and by morning another missed school day. It may have even been appropriate that at 30, I wasn't doing lines of coke in some bathroom, but who knows. And funny enough, I wrote 2 poems about this girl, and they both have the same rhythm, and without any intention at all. I think I only realized it much later. And so I'll read you the second one. It's called Going Down. I remember undressing you in my small, empty bedroom in the middle of the night. I remember the calming sensation of being sober next to you that first time. It was summer, and I was living in an industrial neighborhood, losing my virginity again at 29. I remember lying next to you and listening to your voice go on and on until we kissed. I remember smiling as I saw you pull off your panties with your feet and wrinkle your brow. I waited many years for a woman like you, and when you arrived, I touched all of you as if I had always been there. And then came fall, and I moved into a smaller place on a street named after a Frenchman. And a week ago today, we had a marathon of sorts here. And since then, I haven't seen you. And the last poem in that chapter is called Soliloquies of a Crosswalker. And it's the last poem that I wrote in Israel before I finally made it back to New York to publish the book. And it's called Soliloquies of a Crosswalker. There is a heat wave today, and it makes my thoughts even more unsteady. And for the look of me, one can tell I've had some action, so that the desperation is off for just a bit, and the meaningless storytelling on pause. And I am a bit high with the notion that perhaps, for a moment, I belong to the human race. And the second chapter in the book was written in New York, in Brooklyn. And most of the poems are about a love affair that ultimately ended. I think it's the longest chapter in the book. And the first poem I'll read to you is called Gala. And I always joke that it's the one they'll remember me by. Gala. Eve once fed me an apple from her garden. Its name was Gala, and I was wearing large green mittens and dirty cream shoes, descending a long escalator in the city after Eden. Adam wasn't there, and we were both pregnant, smoking cigarettes without tar and drinking tall silver cans of Japanese beer after the night of the lunar eclipse. I think Adam was off somewhere reading about socialism and punk rock on the toilet, but we weren't sure. And a lot of the poems in that chapter, which is called And All She Does Is Smirk, are relatively short, a few lines long, and I always feel that they're poems that are meant to be read alone and not out loud. But nevertheless, I'll read you 2 of them out loud. And they happen also to be some of my favorites. And the first one is called A Perfect Match. Today it was your dirty, elasticless socks that you left by my bed. They weren't a perfect match. And when I woke up, I was happy. And the second one is called Eyes. And I can dedicate it to my father because he's a big fan of it. Eyes. I like your eyes best in the sun. When I tell you I don't know if I will find anything, but at least let me look. Saturday and Sunday are my only chances. And here in New York, I also had a number of odd jobs. My father jokes that when they asked me what I wanted to do when I graduated university, I said retire. And it's quite exact. And this one is called Senior Citizen. I worked as a theater, at a movie theater in Brooklyn. Senior Citizen. There was an old man who used to come to the cinema where I worked. He had white hair, was a bit slouched, but good walk and okay hearing, and you could see he was very beautiful. He once purchased a senior citizen ticket for $6, gave me a 10, and shoved the 4 back at me. Take it, he said. I'm not going to live much longer. And the first section in the book is called But Nothing Else Happens. And they're the earliest poems. They're poems from as early as when I was 19 until 22 or so. And the first poem in the book is called Côte d'Azur. There is a stone tower between 2 small towns on the Mediterranean. From atop, a girl is afraid of heights, another steps on glass, and a boy tells stories of the moon and sand ripples in some remote corner of the earth, but nothing else happens. And the last poem in the book, which is the only poem in the chapter, that's called The Manhattan Skyline, is the one poem that I published before the book came out, and the only poem that I included. And it'll be the one I'll end with. And it's called Socialite. I drank chain beer tonight and walked a black lab in the snow, passing the apartment buildings of the young and rich and their indoor swimming pools and fancy gyms. As we ran toward the boardwalk, I tried to teach Joseph the dog about the Manhattan skyline, but he seemed more interested in rolling around in the snow and pulling me along. It's the only volunteer work I'd ever agree to do, and if I could give up my day job for this, I would in a heartbeat. On Tuesday was Johan, a half-shepherd, half-Amstaff canine. I think that maybe he doesn't speak English and I chat with him in Italian along the same boardwalk. When I bring him back to the shelter, I tell him that I love him. I remember asking you once if you were getting paid extra for being the advisor of that lame high school literary magazine, and you said, enough to buy an extra order of fries at McDonald's. I've actually used that one once or twice throughout the years. So what if I'm nostalgic? I've been trying to improve my social skills, going to lunches and dinners even though I know in advance how much they will suck. When the conversation shifts to aesthetics and self-expression, I grab my boots and run for the door. I will not be invited back, I'm sure. Thank you. Accepted 2 of my poems, which I found out right when I came to New York 5 years ago, and for that reason also came back this time to participate in that reading, and to the Bowery, of course, for hosting us, and most of all to my dearest lover, Ayala, who spends every day with me, and who also came here to New York to listen to me read. So thank you.
Thank you, at least. Walt Whitman, Rigo, real poetry. Lived in Camden, New Jersey. He said, he who touches this book touches a man. Right? She proved that. He or she who touches her book touches Ayala. No 2 ways about that. That's real poetry. Right? That's why it'll never go away. Right? It'll never be stamped out. That's why the powers that be, I think, are always trying to do that, because they don't want you to touch men and women in books, because they don't want you to touch period, I think. And from what I've seen in the world lately, but that's real poetry, what she just did in written, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm not wrong, so don't correct me. Wasn't that one of the most beautiful voices you just ever heard in your life, though? We're right about that? That's a big It's a beautiful sound, reading beautiful poetry. Can't do much better than that, but we're gonna have to try. Next up is a rare privilege, actually, because what can I say? You know, all the signs got together, and it was so advantageous, and we made some changes and choices because we wanted this next reader to be here, very much so. He could have been here anyway, and he would have been, but we wanted him here as a full-fledged reader, which is what he's going to be doing tonight. Because he is also, coincidentally, the president of the New York Quarterly. Yeah, the president of the New York Quarterly. Daniel, as president of the New York Quarterly, do you fear assassination?
Yes, I do. Doug, please don't do it. I traveled on camel to get here.
Yeah. I was wondering about that. Yeah. Strikes me as dangerous. He's also got a brand new book out. A brand new book coming out incredibly, by some incredible coincidence, published by New York Quarterly Press. Incredible. What can I say? All the signs are here. So let's give a huge, big, warm, gracious welcome for a guy that has broken his ass to keep this going. And here is Mr. Daniel Y. Harris.
Doug, you want to go on tour?
Yeah.
We can go on tour together. Comedy Central, maybe, you know. We'll play beatnik poets.
But the thing is, I'm not trying to be funny, goddammit.
You know, I saw a generation die hysterical naked. I'm just kidding, Doug. Don't look at me like that.
I'll kick you off that fucking thing.
Hello, everyone. I am Daniel Y. Harris, and I am actually the president, yes, the chairman of the New York Quarterly Foundation. Yes. I have been the chairman now for about 2 years. I was involved for 1 year before. And this is all possible because of my very dear friend that I would like to deeply embarrass, Raymond Hammond over there. Who is my dear friend. As you know, and I was thinking for the last 3 years about my reading tonight. You can imagine 3 years of thinking about this reading. Thanks very much. Okay. No. Okay. So, but I am in fact a non-profit professional, though I am in fact between jobs, so to speak. And I've been a fundraiser for about 20 years. So I'm not going to make a fundraising pitch tonight, but I'm going to tell you that the New York Quarterly is a 501c3 non-profit organization. Oh, I just did right. That I wasn't going to do. We rely on the contributions of people like yourselves to support us, to get these books out, to get a new issue of our magazine, which will be a digital issue. We're going to have a new website. We're going to have an app so the really young people will think we're really very, very cool. We are going to do all of this, and we're going to raise more money because one day we're going to have so much. We're going to open up a Swiss bank account, and we're going to have a slush fund, and we're going to party and get yachts and everything else like that. But in all seriousness, this is a very worthwhile organization. I've been a CEO, I've been an executive director, I've been a campaign director, I've been everything. I've overseen $14 million organizations. NYQ is worth it. It's a very, very important organization. It represents a legacy, it represents a future, it represents all that will happen in these major transitions. So we need to support this organization. I support this organization. Tell your friends. Send us a letter. I have a pledge card here. Who wants to? Oh, we're having a fundraising dinner. I've got pledge cards. No pledge cards. But anyway, it's very, very important. So, with that said, and of course that was not a fundraising pitch. I'm not raising money tonight. I'm simply going to read, and I'm going to let Doug raise money. Right, Doug? Get up there and say, we need your money.
Makes sense to me.
This is the second book in a series, really. My first book was called Hyperlinks of Anxiety, and it came out about 3 years ago. This book is called The Underworld of Lesser Degrees, and it represents between these two books. The first book, Hyperlinks, came out by Trevino Barber Press in Somerville. This book is, of course, NYQ, so I'm much more proud of it. It represents 20 years of contemplating poetry, the nature of poetry, the edge, the shattering, the broken vessels, constituting a new kind of language in order to move poetry forward. I'm an impatient reader, but I love poetry, and I don't like to often say that I am a poet because sometimes I believe that that is used as a cliche, right? Everyone is a poet and everyone has a book out. What do we do in poetry to carve out a kind of a language that will push the tradition forward, like the ones that we admire so much, right? When Stevens first came out, as Doug, I'm sure will remind you all, he was radical, a symbolist, someone who was using polysyllabic language, nobody cared. It was ridiculous, right? Now, of course, it's a standard of English departments. So what do we do to advance the cause of poetry? We have to sculpt it, in my opinion. We have to shatter it. We have to scare it into meaning beyond what I feel is simple narrative strain. Narration is important, right? The three dimensions of ordinary life is important, but I think it requires something more, because if we didn't do that, then the great poets before us would not have been able to do what they did. They simply would have said, I was born here, I did that, but they went into somewhere where if they were successful, they carved out a kind of a new holy writ. And we do know what is the one thing that destroys holy writ? Cliche. Endless, endless, endless cliche. And cliches are like a carcinogen. And you begin to accept them, and they begin to sort of decay. But if you can come up with something fresh and engage it with a descriptive language, a symbolic language, a language that is attentive to computer technology and our age and not disdainful of it, you mix that and you get a new kind of language. So I'm hoping, in all ridiculous humility, dressed in black, because it's New York City, everyone is hip in New York. I'm from Southern California, nobody said that. So if we're going to do that, right, at the beginning of the 21st century, aware of the incessant carcinogen that the internet is, we turn that into a language that becomes the new Byzantium, as Yeats would have used it, right? Then we might come up with a language that might be relevant to guests, so that poetry is not boring and stifling and redundant. So that's my hope. And I've seen great ones do it, and all I want to be able to do is be a little moment on the edge of the greats, leading us into a new poetry. This entire book is dedicated to Raymond Hammond, because in these last 3 years, my friendship with Raymond, our endless conversations, mostly about NYQ, how we're going to survive, what are we going to do, how can we get by this, we don't have enough money, we need more board members, etc., etc., etc. I learned about the value of what this thing was. So I took this book and began to craft it and sculpt it and so forth. And so The Underworld of Lesser Degrees is this book here. It's hot off the press. It hasn't even been proofed. There are some in the back there. When I step off the microphone and walk outside, I'm going to be mobbed by 5,000 people who are going to want to buy this book. Now I'm going to read some. I hadn't really planned on reading that many poems because I wanted to mostly talk about the impact of NYQ. But I will read, the book of course is dedicated to Raymond, and the first poem is dedicated to Raymond. Before, when Raymond was still working at the statue, we would talk late in the evening because I was in California and there was 3 hours difference. There was one night, a couple of things were converging in my mind. One, it was bone cold, which I know nothing about being from Southern California. Raymond is telling me how absolutely cold it is. I'm thinking about legacy. I'm hearing, although I did not know him and really know only the books, I was thinking about William Packard, I was thinking about Raymond, I was thinking about the statue, I was thinking about NYQ, and this poem began to shape itself and carve out the beginning of the book. Now, if I can see it, it's not easy to see up here when you don't have very good eyesight. Okay, so let me see here. Okay, it's called Hypostasis. Faith is anemic. Propane, blue, sulfur, pox, Kelvin or Rankine scale to a thermodynamics of absolute zero, and zero is the adiabot S equals zero, the lapse rate of cold, transferring rapture to hoarfrost and ring-billed gulls. It depurifies as clock hours circle in arcs of new sparks, hacked to pieces in shifts of frenzied stupor. Signs of send, rescind, and cloy, and warp, scatter, splinter, bless. It's dead, we're dead before undead in edits. Hack marks of corpses alive by sourature. Mentors on the graviton of a petit mort release oxytocin to swap spleen for on your knees. Pray to appease Asmodai. Zombie with foghorns in the dark hollow hold of Saltalusia. Antic disposition or ontic dispossession. Never feigned, always canonic. To be the tilted palm, packing in the prick light of prayer. Asmodai is Iago, bloated at faith negation. Tongues are unsigned. The haloed flecks of post-humanity still like shards in stasis for you, among the elect, cleaving to a dead man's clismic tip of pass. It's very, very, very quiet. Sorry, Raymond. No, that poem is written in absolute deep love and affection. And that poem is about transmission, legacy. Or what I studied in graduate school, Kabbalah, believe it or not. Transmission of legacy. Now, what am I going to do now? Hold on. This is actually the first time I'm actually opening this book. It's kind of fun. I'm going to read a funny one. Can I take this? That's what's up. Okay, this poem is actually from a compilation of poems that were published in The Exquisite Corpse. I don't know if all of you know Andrei Kudrescu, but he's quite an amazing guy, and I got a nice friendship with him. He's kind of a, he's very vampiric, but I love the guy. Absolutely love the guy. Anyway, he published a collection of shorter poems, and it called Seven Dead Kafkas and a Fork. If you want to know what that title means, we'll talk after the show. This is an excerpt from it, okay? Now, I'm going to try to do it in the voice that I intended. I'm not a big drinker, although I should be. And this is called Drunk by 176. One of these electrolytes, the molten lights. Furthermore, is there polymer in this drink? Barkeep, one more drink from my friend NaC1S-Na plus C1 Salvation. Well, I know how to pronounce it. The solute of dip poles. Who's talking wrong among a drink? Late we swam the big prairie. We were arrested by the natal note chaser, mixing up us, aren't they? You know who we are. National Agency for the Betterment, bet it all. Bitterment, goddamn bitter, no leaves in my lungs. And my friend, the evil Ervent, Vival Mervent, barkeep of written words. There's ammonia in this ale. Ethel, hey Ethel, change her name from Leia, too ethnic, to here in mid-tundra. Have a light, wait, I mean ethanol. Too much more we aldehyde Dias. In this smoky rat hole, my head is a rock on the floor. Sawdust, spit. I'm telling you, they want me on Comedy Central. I really don't like, I think I share Raymond's sense of this, kind of when people write poems about paintings, because really, well, So, because I don't like it, I figured everything you don't like you must challenge because, you know, this whole thing. So what I did is I sort of did a bit of a mockery, but it's very much in the vein of an expectation that ultimately it will be the color blue that turns out to be the real intent behind this poem. And again, those qualities that I was talking about initially are going to work their way in this poem. And this is actually dedicated to a guy named Walter Ruhlmann who lives in France, and he runs a very interesting magazine for all of you who can't wait to get into a new magazine. It's called MG Version. MG is actually mauvaise graine, bad seed. MG Version, you can send your stuff to him, he will probably publish it. Blue Splice. I see blue cyanosis in my zone, a rare blue Delilah in a saucepan of herring with blue black and the discoloration of a bruise at loggerheads. At once blue pills, blue pencils, blue Danube and lilac or blue veins, blue moods and the rarefied blue disc longhorn beetle, pale compared to blue mold in the blue light of a freezer icing a copy of the blue octavo notebooks, a postcard of Picasso's Les Neufs de Piré and a list of Des Blocs writer on the back, Turkish tiles, several plastic blue jays and lapis lazuli, costume jewelry. Alone, there's the blue skin of cold, built as a psychosis of spent haunts and left to sequence, slated to be strung together like blue pearls, beryl, cobalt, damson, cadet, and periwinkle, tinting the bluish shades of verdigris toward the final bleached blue of me. And I will finish this reading by, there are some very long poems in here, and they're very, very difficult, and I apologize for that. But when you get the calling for the complexity of language, you cannot leave it. And so most of it has to do with a very, very long one where I am struggling with Isaiah because I think he's an SOB, forgive me for any fundamentalists out there, but Isaiah in the Hebrew Bible is very, very difficult. So I wrestled with him trying to make some sense out of that guy. So also, you know, as a student of Judaism, I'm not exactly a practicing Jewish person, but I'm definitely deeply involved with the tradition. I have wondered what it might mean to wrestle with Yod He Vav He, the Tetragrammaton, the God of ancient Israel. What is that? What is that entity beyond just simply praying or becoming, you know, Hasidic or becoming Orthodox or what have you? What does it mean to engage with an entity whose function makes King Lear look like a children's story? Complexity, very, very complicated. And of course, we know that the history of religions, at least the Abrahamic traditions, has been an effort to sort of tone down the impact of the God of Israel, El Shaddai, Yod He Vav He, Yahweh, whatever you want to say. That entity is so powerful that we have thousands of years of toning it down. So this is the last poem for this evening, and I'm having a great time. God, I can just, you know. Doug, can I come back like in an hour? Please. Okay, I'll come back in an hour. Thanks very much. It begins with a quote from Baudelaire, because I love Baudelaire, and I'm going to sound like such a snob, so please forgive me, but if you can, by chance, look at him in French, just for a second. Right? I mean, there are some great translators out there. Richard Howard is great. But if you know any French, just try to get a sense of what he's like in French, because it'll just make your skin, you know, crawl. Especially, well, yeah. Anyway, okay. So this poem is called "The Half-Light of Credulity," and the quote is, "But it was precisely because it was an empty game that Baudelaire enjoyed it. Nothing gave him a greater sensation of freedom and solitude than empty, sterile act which produced nothing. A phantom evil which was pursued and suggested rather than realized." Okay, here goes. They're reading this poem in synagogue. Okay, they do it during the Kol Nidre. Okay. Dear Yahweh, The unformed is trussed up as a sacrificial droid, waiting to speak the rupture of your epical stint in clay. Ruptured and sutured, speaking the fissure within divinity, but not divine, not even dim scintillate of what is hazard and named Ayin to quell the aegis plea of a place, a time, a people, a craft. My letter is preemptive. My prosody, the result of a blur in the gleam of irreverent request to change names and be the spectral like a griffin vulture. It's my only chance at progeny. My fault. I remember Abram from Ur of the Chaldees. Remember the boil spilling bile below a low sun firing at the edges of a resolute blessing. I remember the back of his eyes, his father of a nation, uniformed in dark allegiance to a book above stave, cursed to vows to taunt the nimbus of blue sapphires. What's in the book? Where is the cavernous spell that has coerced 1,000 generations of devotees and radical unbelievers colluding in despair and dry cynicism to stress the precise date of its death? I, pursuant to the protocols to provide clear access to the book, say, I am that I am alone, and have no life without you. I erase traces of theogony. I replace exegeticals with rebuses, desperate to identify sinews that connect the burdens of our names. A, the Aleph, lured from Resh by my name, produced the book Abraham, Abram, Ryan, Yahweh, the fourfold tongue cast in a diurnal panache. The book is a vessel containing the point from which nothing has cracked to extend out of itself. Aleph, the first and last point to which zero is filled with a chimera, a corpse, hollow body, the last of the slurred clangor. Be like me, O pods of simulacra. But if you are, I, the Lord of the book, will terminate you and watch. Tribes' names ends with M. Matronita, the mem in tears glared as the glare-eyed Leviathan, Eden's oily conduit to a cemetery of dead letters. We are the percolating letters of names without end, speaking with circumcised tongues, babbling to divide identities from the mystic equity of response. Here's one. When I repeat your prayers to walk a path beyond the powers of the Creator, I tremble in myself, a private anguish, to find myself in a room full of mirrors, surrounded by people who all have my name, who all look like me. Me, the fissure, the dark chasm, groping for a rib, which is the book, to count the letters, the veins, the hapless jubilo of distress that I, Ray and Lev, make of your monieties of trust. Thank you, my dear friends.
I'm inspired. Watch out, I'm inspired. Okay. What's my name? Got an idea. Who the heck is that? Oh, this is it. Cool. That was great. That took me by surprise. That was so great. Damn. But like I said, the man inspired me. That's one enthusiastic cat, is it not? All right? And I respect enthusiasm. You know, maybe over and above all anything else. I'll tell you why. Because it comes from the Greek word, ethenos, which means to have God within. Daniel's got God within. God's running wild within him, I think, as a matter of fact. And also, he makes a point, yeah, some kamikaze talent has got to try and push language forward. You got to. You don't want to, who the hell wants to? But you got to. It's been a long time since Wallace Stevens and James Joyce and William Faulkner, the people who did that, Herculean efforts, right? And 9 out of 10 times a strikeout. But someone's got to do it. He's right about that. And it inspired me. He did not make a pitch for your money. And I ain't gonna either. I'm gonna set an example. Where I come from, we say, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one. You're gonna see a sermon right here and now, folks. I didn't know I was gonna do this, but like I said, the guy got to me. He really actually did. I got this letter here. Well, I got this letter from the New York Quarterly. What could this be? I put my glasses on, read this damn thing before I talk about it. Let's see here. Ooh. Wow. Dear Douglas Treem, that's my name. Enclosed, please find your royalty check for royalties for books sold in 2014. It amounts to $2.25. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I don't mean to brag. That means in the year 2014, a hell of a good year, I sold one copy of my book. Well, the New York Quarterly sold one copy of it. I do a little research, find out who bought it, but I don't know, I'm kind of scared. I think it was bought by the ghost of Francis Thompson. Boy, I pray to every now and then. Boy, that would be creepy. He wrote The Hound of Heaven. We got a hit for Francis Thompson.
Yeah.
Thanks. Francis, still reading you. Yeah. Well, what I'm going to do with this, you know what I'm going to do with this check? I'm going to sign it, and I'm going to sign it over to Raymond Hammond tonight. That's what I'm going to do. As a contribution to the New York Quarterly. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. And like I said, rather see a sermon than hear one. You just saw one. Let's have some more poetry. Because it's really sounding good to me tonight, isn't it? Ayala was just great. Then Daniel, to use a medical term, blew my mind. Right? We got another. I sure hope she's here. I think she's here. I sure hope I pronounced his name correctly. I took some lessons earlier, as a matter of fact. But I'm going to say Nicelle. Did I get it?
Almost.
Nicelle?
Nicelle.
Nicelle. All right. Now, let me just quote a little something to you. Because I've got an open mind ever since. You know? I was listening to something earlier today, and here are these lines. Came from another poet, one of my favorite poets. His name is Moon Martin. How hip is the room? We got a hit for Moon Martin? Oh, man. Okay. Anybody? Because admittedly, that's super hip. That's supersonically hip. Moon Martin. But Moon Martin said, you may have heard this. You had me down, 21 to zip. Smile of Judas on your lip. Why do I say that? Because I think Judas is one of the most important and fascinating subjects that we can study and meditate on and work with in this world, in our lives. And I know a great American poet named James Wright did just that. And I think our next poet did something along the same lines. Am I right?
I did.
Oh, great, great. Sure would like to hear about that. I'm going to pronounce this name correctly. Wait a minute, I already forgot how to do it. Fudge.
You can call me Nick.
Pardon my language. Nicelle. Davis.
Yeah.
Come on out. All yours, ma'am.
All right, I did. I wrote a book called Becoming Judas, where I become Judas and have sex with Jesus in the form of John Lennon. But I'm not reading that book tonight, I'm sorry. I'm actually reading from my new book, which is called In the Circus of You, which just came out with Rose Metal Press. And this is like almost like a church, isn't it? Tonight is like a sermon church sort of moment. At the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was, and then we all poets try to figure out what that is. So the New York Quarterly actually was the first journal to ever publish me. And and the acceptance letter was so sweet. It said, "You're an odd chick, but you're gonna be all right." And then the follow-up to that was the New York Quarterly was the first journal to ever review my work. So my first book was Circe, so my first review came out with them. And a big part of being a poet is really this like sort of fight to figure out what is human, who gets to be human, and am I human? And so I feel like the New York Quarterly gave me that by just saying, you're an odd chick, but you're gonna be all right. So a lot of language, especially poetry, we think of language as a way to define, but poetry is actually the undefiner. It tries to undefine things, and so it tries to open up. It takes one word and opens it up again and again. And so, since we were talking about etymology, the etymology of the word vagina. Would anyone like to know about that? Does anyone already know about it?
I'd like to know.
Oh, I'm glad you want to know. The word vagina actually gets its origin from the word vanilla, as in the vanilla plant. And if I were to draw it for you, which I do my high school students, they love it. It looks very pornographic. So the vanilla plant has these big, beautiful, white, leafy leaves with pink edges, and then a giant stamen sticking out of it, right? So it looks like sex. But it also implies, the word vanilla goes back to sheath to the sword. So it's basically a penis purse. Yeah. So the word that defines a woman then has this odd, tangled, sexy yet oppressive history to it. And so to use it is to sort of lock yourself into your own, imprisonment in a weird way. And so I feel like poets really chafe against that. It's not something that pays much. I mean, $2 in royalties, you're really rocking it. You were later on maybe. I know. That's what I'm saying. It's not something that you're rewarded in money at all. But in small increments, I think we give each other our human. And so I want to just say thank you to the New York Quarterly for giving us space and a time for that to happen. My book is about circus freaks. Some of them having sex. So I'm going to take you through five performances by circus freaks, and hopefully you'll like them. My understanding of love between women, or L'Homme Monsieur de Secure, which I would like to dedicate to Cheryl Gross, who's the illustrator in here. So there's conjoined twins having sex, and that's illustrated in here, if you'd like to look at that later. It's exciting. My understanding of love between women, or L'Homme Monsieur de Secure, is a show seen on YouTube. You watch paper clothes stapled onto a naked woman with an upholstery gun, her mouth sewn closed with a hand needle. In the background, string instruments strike dissonance, a voice repeating, "The body is dead, the body is dead, the body is dead." But you see her blink. Another woman acts upon her. With each stitch, you see them unite. She is obviously in pain. She obviously considerate of this pain. Each flinches slightly at contact, but does her best not to acknowledge the ins and outs of thread. So the next poem is my understanding of love from a man, or The Rubber Boy, born same year as I, 1979, which I'd like to dedicate to my brother and best friend, Curtis, who taught me a lot about how to be human, and I feel does really good work to fight for people to have the right to be human, so I'd like to thank him for that. Straitjacket routine done backwards. He first did it to be cheeky, to lose his job. Now he is famous for escapes into restraint, the world's only living enterologist. Self-discovery at age 4, he fell from his bunk bed and landed split in half. Then books with pictures, contortion, mimicry as hobby. Final act, he dislocates hips from shoulder, carefully rearranges ribs, drops heart below sternum so an audience can watch it beating. I want to dedicate this to you, who I don't know, but I love your hair. Hi. Since I don't know you, I'm just going to dedicate it to your hair. Is that okay? Great. Maybe we'll get to know each other later. Oh, she kissed me. Okay. My understanding of love of self, or what I can recall from the film The New Sideshow. Lucifer says, I ask the audience if they want blood. Always the answer is yes. Of course, it's yes. One more time, louder. Yes. Yes. Until bleeding. Then they all say, no, 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 right? You say no? Mm-hmm. The acting summary is this. With a syringe, she pours herself into a cup and drinks. She makes this look like hunger's first contact with consumption. Lips so erect you can see her mouth pulsing. Lucifer says, I had a normal childhood, maybe spent too much time alone with a book of matches. You and I, right? So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to those conjoined twins having sex. And since we're in the Church of Poetry, I think conjoined twins having sex is the closest thing I've ever come to believing in soul. And the reason for this is I found out that when conjoined twins are in intimate situations, one of the twins can actually shut down consciousness somehow. And the other twin describes this as the most terrifying experience of their life because they feel utterly alone. Because they're used to feeling this second consciousness within one body. And I find that really interesting because the one thing that brings us so close together, this great intimacy, is for another group of people the thing that makes them feel isolated and alone. But this idea of consciousness is really exciting to me. More than a construct, there might actually be some magic in us. So it goes between two twins. There's conjoined boys and conjoined girls. So whenever it switches, I'll just do a little slash mark. Okay. Complications in the art of monogamy or conjoined twins. Sheets hung from lines block the sight of a half-man in full rapture. A wife wraps around her side of a torso. Her legs quiver at climax. Clutching to the edge of a bed, brother tries to quiet his blind effort, bending to the will of brother's movements. Both undone in tonight, not his woman. Blue morning clutches his empty limbs. He falls asleep to the soft coos of brother's birdsong singing beautiful into the matted web of bride's hair. Breath joining three to a rhythm of one. Sister died before her. The living woman refuses to be cut from the corpse. She says, as we came together, so we go together. Dragging loose legs across the kitchen floor, she puts a kettle on. Sipping hibiscus, she feels her sister's cold lips kiss their neck. During sex, a conjoined twin will slip behind the consciousness of the other to provide privacy. While searching his wife's living dust for the light needed there, he grieves for the loss of his brother. The wall of flesh rises with cell division. Wife longs for the hair-shoot feel of her wolfman ex-lover. Every kiss begs to break bread, to have multitudes dwell together in the pleasure of light upon light upon light. Conjoined sister at 30 masturbates for the first time. The weight of her dead sister draped next to her, she forgets the corridors of their limbs. Body overrun by light, desire shucked off, she moans the song of settling earth. Dust covers her, alone and complete. There's a lot in the news right now about who gets to be human, right? Who gets to walk the street safely and who gets to just be shot. Ella Halper, lessons in accountability are why students make the best teachers. Death unknown, the dash after her birth lends to the possibility that she is living off of money she collected from being shown in 1886 next to lions and elephants. Build a quadruped, knees bending opposite, stage name, Camel Girl, but it wasn't enough. Curiosity unsatisfied, audiences felt cheated. She had no humps. In picture, she holds herself up by a table ledge. Her face is soft as a child's, but her eyes solid as fists. She wants an education. I build a school for her, sepia paper doll, use my teeth as a desk, my tongue for a chair, assign books, talk about sentence structure, how the misuse of grammar creates emphasis. More than any, she holds me accountable for staring. It is her shy smile, straight bangs, overbite, that reminds me no matter how I've been called an animal, I've never had to fight a camera for human recognition that I am of their kind. So I obviously used sideshow performers, historical sideshow performers, to try to create an understanding of what human is. And that's what is called appropriation. So after these sort of ghosts, helps me understand human, this was their final message to me. The mob of freaks protest. We, like you, are wrongly used. Close your eyes and let us all go. Thank you so much.
Oh, we're doing great. Time-wise, we're doing great. Not bad. She's got a book called The Circus of You. The only change I would make should be The Circus of Me. That's what you should call that book. That was great. And also, folks, did you catch that dress? Isn't that a beautiful dress? Fantastic. Yeah. And that poetry too, that dress. That is so, who are you, Polly McGrew, if you know that, if you get that reference, right? I'm sure you do. All right, that was just great. Fantastic. There was Ayala. There was Daniel. There was just, I'm going to mispronounce her name, Nicelle.
Yeah.
Nicelle. 3 totally different voices. 3 totally different visions. All of it poetry. That's what's so great about poetry. It's all so radically different. And also true. And also real. And it's all poetry. It's all just beautiful. Thank you so much for that. It was just great. Well, we got another. Hey, if I didn't talk to this guy earlier and get to know him a little, I'd be worried for him. Because he's got to close the show. And this has been, in my estimation, a hell of a show. Are you on the same page here? Yeah. This is amazing. Thanks to these poets. Thanks to these incredible poets. Well, we got a poet who has a rare distinction about himself. One that I ain't got, and I ain't never gonna get. This guy has been a poet laureate. I'll let that sink in. This guy's been a poet laureate, not in his living room, okay? Of a pretty distinctive place. If you're gonna be a poet laureate of anywhere, this is a pretty good place to be. It was Gloucester, Massachusetts, which is a pretty interesting place. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, John, I believe Charles Olson came from Gloucester?
Good night, good memory, yeah.
Yeah, well I didn't know him, Jesus. But that was a pretty good poet, that was a pretty good guy. Black Mountain poets, I like them. You know why? They weren't depressed. Okay, maybe they were loaded, but they weren't depressed, come on. Anyway, and I appreciate that, I'll put it that way. Yeah, so John's actually been a poet laureate, which I think is a damn good thing to have. That's a credential, you know? I know, hey, would anyone here turn it down? You all would? No, you wouldn't, but I'll tell you, speaking of poets laureates, you know what? Amiri Baraka, got a hit from Mary Baraka, a member of the board, I think, at one point. You know what, when he was alive, right, Mary Baraka. He was the poet laureate of New Jersey. The poet laureate of New Jersey. You know how long he lasted? About a week. And you know what they found out? They couldn't fire him. There was no procedure to fire the poet laureate. So they just disbanded the position. Now that's a poet laureate. That's an achievement. And they've never had one since. God bless them. Yeah, may you rest in peace, which I don't think he wanted. Anyway, we got a poet for you. This guy's been a poet laureate of a hell of a place, Gloucester, Mass. I had a few laughs there. That's how I define any place. And he's got a great name, too. His name, I'm going to say it and I'm going to pronounce it correctly. I like it a lot because it's I think he's got a name that sounds like his poetry. You know what I mean? Some people do. Nicelle did. His name is John J. Ronan. Come on up, John. Come on up, my friend. There you go. Thank you. My pleasure. Knock us down.
Thank you for that nice introduction, Todd. I want to thank New York Quarterly as well for presenting this and the good work they do down here in New York. It's also a thrill for me to know that Daniel and Raymond actually exist. I've seen their names, I've corresponded with them over the years, and although I suspected that they existed because they were doing such good work, I'm very happy to have it confirmed. Anybody here from Loyola or Illinois? Anybody Loyola, Illinois people make it? I'm going to read one poem. It's called Taking the Train of Singularity South from Midtown. I don't read often outside of New England, but I wanted to take this opportunity here in New York to read a poem and give this poem some air in New York City, because this poem is an anthem for New York City. It's a homage poem. It's a tribute poem to New York City, which I love very much, and I look forward always to coming down here, and always return very weary and broke. But it's good. It's worth it. I am, by the way, looking for composers who are working on New York music. If you're looking for text, look me up afterwards. A little background on this. I've been in New York many times, sometimes for a day, sometimes for a week, and I've spent a lot of time on the subways, as all of you have. And I always took notes on the subways, about the subways, especially the one train, which starts in Van Cortlandt Park and runs down to the Battery. And because I always saw that numeral as a designation of unity and something about, symbolically, what New York is trying to do, this wonderful, if flawed, but still wonderful city, reaching out to allow people to come together and be human. And also, while I was poet laureate, I became more aware of civic poetry, which I can define for you later at the bar. But civic poetry is about civic, city, communal subjects for the city, for the communal subjects that you're writing about.
Like
So
Good Harbor Home, Good Harbor Home, for instance.
Yes, my friend Dave, pipe down.
Good Harbor Home, very good at that.
And where was I? Thank you, David. The one train is very symbolic for me, and I had notes about it stored up in some of my files, and I was going to get it someday on paper. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, Mayor Bloomberg made a, yes, I'm with you, made a crack about Irish drunks hanging off the balcony at the American Irish Historical Society when the St. Patrick's Parade went by on Fifth Avenue. That society is opposite the Met. I happen to be a member. And that pissed me off, because we're not all drunk all the time. And there was some press about that. The New York Times had 2 or 3 articles about this little flap, that slur that you would think would be beneath the mayor, but it wasn't. and he had one of his flags apologize. But I thought that that was counter to my definition of what New York would be. It's encompassing, it's embracing, and it tries to bring us together despite our differences, tries to bring the tribes together. So I got to do this poem. And then because I happen to be a member of the American Irish Historical Society, I sent it to the Recorder, their literary publication, and they published it. I sent him a copy, but I have not heard from him. If any of you have contact with the mayor, please, or the former mayor, please let me know. I'd like to make sure he is forced to read this poem. I'm going to ask for some assistance on this poem from my daughter-in-law, Dominika Michalowska. Would you come on up, please? She's an example of what the poem's about. She was born in Bydgoszcz, Poland, a very beautiful city that we have had the joy to visit, but she lives and works in Brooklyn now. And that kind of movement is something about the key to this poem. So she is going to read the station stops along the way in taking the train of singularity south from Midtown.
42nd Street.
As the funnel of everyone in Times Square cascades down the station stairs, pace and urgent purpose, damming briefly at turnstiles before cleaving into swift, diverged currents, hot and breathless as they pick platforms, stop to listen for slivering steel drums in the wait for translation to work or home. Here, at the side of a narrow island 40 feet underground, with a windrush and rattle that drive away agile, enterprising mice. Et Tag, Bir Tren, Mihoja Treni, Ein Tren, Premier Train, Jeden Trenovat, the red one train halts as mustered public potluck steps forward, hushed and obscure, hips shifting at doors in slide-by witness, separate bodies, white and yellow, brown, black, and tan, pocked or whiskied, wan, green, gray, big and bonehouse, the meek, mouthy, angry, lost. A tourist who trails maps and binoculars, jamming last onto the crowded car. Aptrance and defensive doze, deft conventions of eye and elbow mind the tribes. A breath brushes your strapping hand. The platform passes.
34th Street.
Tumbled from the scrum of Penn Station, a handsome hardboys followed by nuns, louche in blue loafers, who start with the tame tourist, a fresh mark, move to a laptop and a clenched lap, a plugged Hummer, a patient cop, smiling like saints as they panhandle the parish, the buxom beauty who pulls open her purse, continuing slowly to a witness of rapt women as she throws dimes into the can. Clink, clink. The thing of it is, here's the thing, the reason is, yes. Eyes rise to Viva Las Vegas, Absolute, a scratched Cadbury ad, Diana and Elvis together at last.
28th Street.
Morning unfolds. A uniformed girl, perfumed and war-painted, twirls on arrival, greets the hard boy's attitude with a teasing parade of school plaid, half and half harlot, ingenue, salsa, sour grape, and taboo.
23rd Street.
Opined widely by a man who makes his mute partner blush back, a blonde by the blustery mater, opposite his signing hands and the black habits, this gently defined common commute below Fashion Ave, sounded out in Gap and Caps, Jets, Giants, Puma, Nike, in tapestry pants, NYFD, in the sexy matron, the Sybil, who speaks with a weary and resigned wisecrack sadness.
18th Street.
Anymore, forgotten and apart, anonymous. during a door delay in which a pigeon engaged in a serious moral mission preens onto the car like the pride of Chelsea. An urban bird who avoids the eyes of travelers, they in turn avoiding the bird, behind pickets of posture or printed word. The nuns, surrounded by trousers, smile. The bumpkin, gaze behaving, smiles. The practiced pigeon, a positive nodder, fronts the speechless woman who figures food with a brown bag at her knees. And witness-wise, dim as destiny, fate, or whatever happens, eats seeds from her open hand.
14th Street.
Lights flicker. The train, in fits, limps to the village, St. Vincent's. The sage woman, staring intensely at a dark wood of girders and graffiti, bristles, bosoms, and big rings. The only rebuttal's love, longing. The cars start. Peeper skews to Viagra, visit the Brooklyn Zoo. Listens to chatter blend with brat-happy prattle. The porn plot girl who giggles like tickling and sways sailor to the rock and roll of the train, mixed with tin clinks of a can's conjured coins, the cluck of nuns, whole rests from the helpmeet whose pigeon pecks at sunflower seeds, a tightly fused and multi-tracked, sweet for the city in clickety-clack.
Christopher Street.
At Christopher, a drunk curses Christ. Easy credit, his mother, and the Mets. Warns of the end of the world and laughs. No one gets on, no one off.
Houston Street.
The train stops short of Houston, stops in the sealed tunnel. Engines stop, dull lights die, as bodies breathe an undivided sigh. Lights on, off. Tense whispers worm the blind silence, stage stripped to underlying time. The long, long loss of light. When a Zippo's flicked at the far end of the car, the wise woman sends down a candle. The candle slowly returned in grudged transfer, clothes soft on the row of stoic handlers, God-gift and galoot, gangbanger, faces awake in pitch-driven epiphany as grace is held and given. The hard boy's forehead flames with lipstick, and the blousy bird runs before the wick. Lights, cars jerk, lurch. Shoes shuffle, buttocks touch, breasts and elbows, corps de ballet in brave, awkward, standing balance.
Canal Street.
During the usual shift and witness, the schoolgirl in gimmick innocence leaves with hard boy, his target heart. Scratch and match, tartan tats. The bird, confident that symbol will solve for self, takes a seat after canal.
Franklin Street.
At Franklin, it's goodbye to the bum who rises with help from the hardy nuns. Goodbye to the quiet signers who nod and stand, fire silence, hand in hand.
Chambers Street.
Riders, their rides ending were begun, are off and on, fungible, one. You, with your field glasses and guides, you become everyone too. Quietly beside yourself in witless, wondering joy. No longer alone, no longer on the way. Myriad, American, arrived at last in the available day. The platform passes. Et Tag, Bir Tren, Emotion Trainee, Ein Tren. One, existing whole in a sphere, a Newman or essence, and no more. The reason being, yes. The breath and brush of necessary witness, superposition of drunk and dove and oracle, blue loafers, love struck in fugitive communion, our close going on the warm, coincident cars.
on the number 1 track.
Watching what they were doing. Big darn. Oh. Man. I'm sure all around the world there are other poetry readings tonight. Simultaneously, probably. Exact same time. And I'm sure none of them came close to what's happened here tonight on stage. It couldn't. If they did, I sure wish I was there. But I don't think they did, and I'm sure glad I'm here. Because, let me put it this way, about these poets, these 4 poets that appeared tonight. I'm going to quote a movie I saw, a Bollywood movie. Anyone ever catch any of the Bollywood movies, right? Saw one on TV, right? And there's a tremendous line in the movie. Are these people pretending to be gods? Or are these gods pretending to be people? The answer to that question occurred to me tonight. These are poets. That's what they are. These poets. These are not superhuman. They're the way normal people should be. And maybe someday they will be. Wallace Stevens was mentioned earlier today, right? On the stage, yeah. And what we saw on stage tonight, what I got, and what so thrilled me, was, I can only quote Wallace Stevens, it's like a piece of the sun, he said. It's like a piece of the sun. It is like a new knowledge of reality. 4 incredibly different poets, 4 incredibly different people, 4 absolutely authentic, true versions of poetry. You get that in every issue ever printed of the New York Quarterly. In closing, I mentioned Tom Gunn, right? Sure. Okay. So we'll end on a Tom Gunn story. Saw Tom Gunn read once. And the story he told, right? He said he was on a subway in New York City, in for the reading, as a matter of fact. And he saw one of his poems printed in the subway, that poetry in motion thing, right? And they had one of Tom Gunn's poems there. There's a poem called Jamesian. And here's the poem. It went like this. Their relationship consisted of discussing if it existed. Okay. Jamesian, get it? Reference to Henry James, right? So there's his poem. And he noticed that underneath it, someone had written something. So he went a little closer, and he read his own poem again, Jamesian. Their relationship consisted of discussing if it existed. And underneath it was written, yeah, man, I didn't get no pussy either. Tom Gunn was a great poet. And so was whoever that motherfucker was who wrote that Enriquez poem. And Tom Gunn knew that. And Tom Gunn quoted that at Town Hall when I saw him read. And the New York Quarterly is the only magazine in history that would have printed both of those poems. Because they're both poetry. The only thing more beautiful than the Bowery Poetry Club are the people who work and create the Bowery Poetry Club. These beautiful people over there. We thank them from the bottom of our hearts. So you supported the Quarterly by your presence here. You supported these poets, and they were great. And I thank them, all 4 poets, for their incredible gift that they've been given, that they gave to us tonight, that they shared with us. God willing, oh hear, O Israel, as Isaiah would say. God willing, because nothing happens in this world one moment before or after God wills it. We'll do this again a month from now, on the 2nd Sunday of August. And I just hope to goodness that by hook and by crook, you can all be here again for that. And if not, just think of it that day, all right? And go like this inside yourself, because you're a part of it. You're a part of it now. Well, I'm just going to stretch my arms out because this air is thick with poetry. And I want to take some of it with me, because you don't find that much of it out there. But we got it right here tonight. And I don't ever want to lose it. And I want to do it again a month from now. Oh, that feels good. Thank you all very, very much. God bless you.